having that to come back to and saying like, hey, of all the other crazy things that could happen and get thrown your way as a leader, I've got this that's my stability. How's that helped you?
They're looking at me too.
Yeah.
And when you can say what we just walked through, that can build a base for integrity. Knowing all that I've got the base.
Yeah.
I've got this foundation.
There's different ways that people are inspired, but I think one of them is just consistency.
1,440 minutes every day. So I want to be able to do that.
I
and
love
have a
that
great,
you know that.
That character part of it. And I didn't see it when it was happening, but I can see it now.
Welcome to First and Focused, the podcast where faith meets leadership. I know you're going to put me on the spot. I don't know what you're going to ask me to say. I'm Mark Greaves, and in each episode, I sit down with business and industry leaders who put God first in their work and stay focused on building his kingdom through their calling. I could sit here and talk with you all day.
Keep up the great work, brother. The Lord is using you powerfully. I love you. I love watching what Jesus is doing in your life.
Well, welcome to the First and Focus show. I'm your host, Mark Greaves, and this is where we interview leaders from various industries who are putting God first in their work and staying focused on his call through their missions. Today, we are joined by Mr. Greg Alcorn.
Thank you.
Greg, welcome.
Awesome to be here. I'm literally looking forward to it.
Yeah, man, I'm pumped. So you're officially our first out-of-state guest here from the great state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
The sunnier, warmer state of North Carolina.
Not by much. Not the last couple of weeks like y'all have. But,
well, I was going to say, yeah.
Did you hear that? I said,
you've been here on a couple of good, y'all, and you've been here on like the best 2 days we've had in a long, long time.
Yeah.
If you were here about a month ago, you wouldn't have been so happy.
Okay. All right. Well, you're welcome to come down to North Carolina anytime.
Well, hey, I will take you up on that.
Okay.
I will take you. You show me around though?
Yes, sure
all right.
will.
All right, let's do it.
Big state.
All right, well, everybody gets an intro.
Okay.
And yours is pretty long because you've done a lot of stuff.
Oh.
So we're gonna get to hear a lot of wisdom coming out of your mic
we'll
today.
See.
So, all right, here we go. I'm gonna do this best I can.
Thank you.
Greg Alcorn, you're an American entrepreneur and businessman who has founded and led companies starting from 0 to employees to numbering in the thousands. You're currently the founder and CEO of Global Contract Services, which provides contact center and back office support with outsourcing, contract management, and consulting for various industries and institutions. You're a graduate of Catawba College in your hometown. You hold an MBA from UNC Charlotte. You authored the book, 7 Dumb Things We All Say, Smart Ways to Improve Every Relationship, focused on practical communication and soft skills that strengthen teams and relationships. Most recently, after being appointed to the North Carolina Board of Education, you founded ApSeed Early Childhood Education, a nonprofit devoted to early childhood literacy in the pre-K and kindergarten levels, which is aimed at closing the resource gap for children across our nation. You're the son of a minister. You've kept faith at the center of your life. You're a husband, a father, and most importantly, a lover and follower of Jesus Christ.
Yes, sir. That's good.
Is that a good rundown?
Yeah, that is. That worked all right.
Yeah, I did my research.
Yeah.
I told you before the show. Yeah, you're easy to find because you've done so many interesting things. I don't even really know where to start.
Well, I can tell you the entrepreneurial part is intriguing to me because, first of all, I don't know how to spell it. And
it is hard. That's a hard word. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be entrepreneurial today. Yeah. It just sort of, there's these iterations of life that occur that you look back through the rearview mirror and you say, hey, we created something back there.
Yeah.
Or we took something that was, that was at a level like 1 or 2 employees and made it into 2,000.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really what we wrote down to say that we were going to do. But
that is interesting, isn't it?
It's a lifestyle.
Yeah. And you've been at it for a long time.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to skip to my second question here because we're already on the track, but so looking at your bio, SOMAR, that's how you pronounce that, right?
SOMAR.
You started that in 1985?
I did.
So it goes back a little ways.
Yep.
But that literally was the business that started with just a couple of people.
That's right.
And it grew to thousands, right?
Correct.
Can you tell us this? How did you decide back then, all right, I'm jumping in the water, I'm going to start something? Because starting is one of the most difficult things to do. How did it go from something small to something so big?
Well, I was the marketing director for a small metals distributorship called Southern Alloy.
Okay.
And then the person that ran that company, Dick Virtue, was a ex-Naval Academy graduate, and he was an entrepreneur. And he said to us when we first joined, the 3 of us, he said, my job is to give you the opportunity to run a company if you want to. And he said, and so I started in inside sales, went to outside sales, the marketing department. I was blessed to be able to have some experience in what were called computers back then.
I was going to say in 1985. Yeah. You were getting to know something that was brand new.
Right. Got to invent a bunch of stuff as far on the computer, or transfer, inventory and sales and marketing and all these things onto the computers. And that was fantastic. And we had this method of making phone calls to prospective metals buyers. Yeah. And then we also had the 30,000 name mailing list that had for machine shops and original equipment manufacturers throughout the Southeast. And so we were sending mailings out to them. Yeah. And so our insurance agent came by and was watching this machine, pumping out all these letters and things like that. And he said, "Hey, can you do that for me? Can we do that in the town next door?" I'm like, yeah. Yeah, why not? Yeah. So we were Southern Alloy's marketing department. We said, well, let's start this company we've been talking about. So we started Southern Marketing and knew the Mason-Dixon line was pretty close by. So that's what SOMAR stands for. So SOMAR, yeah. Okay. So when we did things right, we would call ourselves So Marvelous. And when we did things wrong, we would call ourselves So What.
That's awesome.
But strategic planning jumped in 1988 and 1987, 88, where the person that owned the company came back with strategic planning from this leadership conference he had, and we walked through all that. It was miserable, having to answer all these questions about, what your competitors look like, what were the threats and opportunities, all the SWOT stuff, and then, but what rang true to me was, what is your competitive advantage and your distinctive competency? What can you do that you can do better than anybody else and do a lot of it? And we looked around and we were a marketing company, so we would do magazine ads, we'd do direct marketing, direct mail, we would do TV ads and radio spots and stuff like that. And by the way, we did this the telephone work with a predictive dialer that we had, that we were doing it for a fast-growing grocery store chain called Food Line. Yeah. And so we did all that strategic planning, and we're going like, man, we're not good at anything except that dialer. Yeah. So we scrapped everything except that and focused on that, got some great salespeople to help us to identify who were the big users of that type of telephone work. We went from 2 to 20 employees in 1 year to 200 people the next year. In 5 years, we had 2,000 employees.
Well, it's funny because you picked the hardest one, and maybe that's why. Maybe that's why it was so easy to stand out. It's like anybody can put an ad in a magazine. Anybody can send a piece of mail to a mailbox, but actually having a human-to-human interaction where it works and you can convert a sale, that's the hardest thing in that pile of things you listed there, I think.
Right, and then you've got human resources. Yeah, you've got to deal with 2,000 people.
That's true.
To be able to do that, and so. Something's going to happen every day.
Now, was that all out of Salisbury? Because my first, that's where you live, right? You still live in your hometown?
Yeah.
Which is right between Winston-Salem and Charlotte?
Mm-hmm.
So I had a question about that because I always think it's fascinating when people kind of put down roots, where they were from. You grew up in that area, didn't you?
I did. I grew up in Salisbury.
Okay, so give me the story on that. How have you decided to just invest your life there? Because it's kind of rare where you see somebody that's a leader of your caliber that's done the things that you've done, who they live in the hometown where they were born. It didn't happen a lot. Yeah,
well, family, my mother and father were very important to me. My church, I've been in the same church 60 years. I've been able to have the doctor, same doctors, same friends, and the friends, I come back from doing something in New York City and I'm still the knucklehead. Yeah. It's like, well, wait a minute.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So being able to do that, that's helped me focus on business initiatives or nonprofit initiatives that I don't have much. I can get rid of the noise. Yeah. So I've got 1440 every day, 1,440 minutes every day. So I want to be able to do that.
I love that you know that.
Yeah, great. What is it, 24 hours, 60 minutes, apply it out. And that's what you got. You just got to make the most out of that. And so to be able to come back to the same house that I've lived in, and my wife, Missy, and I have lived in for 26 years, to my wife of 35 years, to our children, to, knowing all that I've got the base. Yeah. I've got this foundation. I can go to church on Sunday and I know, I can invest time in in talking to visitors, that I don't have a chance. They haven't. Thank goodness I don't teach Sunday school anymore.
Yeah.
Gosh, that was hard.
You probably got like the little indent right where your butt goes in the pew. I'm sure you got your spot in church.
No, I move around.
Okay, okay.
But you're right. That's what
cool though.
Most of it. It's just keep moving it. But that's helped me a lot to stay there and invest in that. And don't get Salisbury. It's between Winston and Charlotte, so there's 2 million people within a 50-mile radius.
Yeah,
and so there's a lot to do. To there, but I've probably been to 20 countries and all over the United States. And
do you think that groundedness, how's that helped you as a leader? Because it's when you're talking about that being a home base, it's resonating with me.
Yeah.
I mean, I love my wife. I've got my kids. We've got our church. I mean, having that to come back to and saying like, hey, of all the other crazy things that could happen and get thrown your way as a leader, I've got this that's my stability. How's that helped you? I
think if from my leadership standpoint, I always like to be curious, like to be challenged, like to make sure I'm staying totally focused on all the people and processes around me, but they're looking at me too.
Yeah.
And when you can say what we just walked through, that can build a base for integrity. If you ask me, that's my opinion. That they don't, he's not running around. He's not doing, he's got this base. So if he does that, then he believes he wants that. I want to tell everybody around me, I want that for you.
Yeah.
So that
well,
helps
it's a leader worth following for sure. I think that's what, there's different ways that people are inspired, but I think one of them is just consistency and decency and doing what you say you're going to do. And that home life that you've just described, I mean, that's got to be a help. It's definitely not a detractor from any of those things.
Yeah. So. And it's been interesting that, because to me, that's character.
Yeah.
It seems like, was this brought to you by the letter C? But the character part of it, and I didn't see it when it was happening, but I can see it now that our core group that works with GCS, Global Contact Services, and ApSeed, and some of the other entities, they're all solid people. They're all, they have their faith, they have their families, they have their communities, and that helps keep us grounded. So we have the confidence to work together through iterations that we don't know what the outcome's going to be, but we go ahead and can do it and can change when we need to.
So looking back on some of these businesses that you built, how do you see God's gifts playing out in real time? Like, do you know what your spiritual gifts are? And then like looking back, I'm like, all right, I had the guts to do some of these things. By God's grace, they worked. But specifically, he engineered my strengths and the things about me to go out and execute that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I got wired by my parents and by the activities in that little town, like we're talking about, that everything was there. My father was not a minister with a church. He was a minister with a conference. He had a region that he was responsible for, 142 churches. So he would go out and be able to help in conflict resolution. He'd come back every night of the week because he'd have to be at somebody's church going through some problem or trying to call a minister or something like that. And we'd sit around at 11 o'clock at night and watch some comedy thing and talk, and he would share with those with me. But by being a conference minister, he was the conduit for people coming from all over the country and the world, to be able to minister or be able to present to Western North Carolina.
Yeah.
So two of those, one was Millard Fuller, who started Habitat for Humanity.
Yeah.
So he came to our house. And then the Reverend Harold Wilkie came to our house and spent 3 nights in our guest room. Very meaningful to me that he would go and make presentations, go with my father and come back, and could do it all by himself without any assistance. Reverend Harold Wilkie was born with no arms. And he sat there with us at breakfast and lunch and dinner. He took his own bag and opened the old car door by himself. He went and made presentations all over the place. He is, and there's a picture at the White House of him and the South Lawn with a picture with President Bush and some senators and other things signing the Americans with Disability Act, ADA. And so he was at our place. And that was just, you could take that 360. I work with people with disabilities now with Global Contact Services.
Yeah.
We yesterday we did 47,500 conversations with people with disabilities to help them with their transportation needs because of the ADA, Americans Disability Act. So being able to have that and one
what
more,
a cool connecting. I feel like God connects dots sometimes that are just like, man, that's really hard, but you did it. I mean, how cool is that?
Super cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wired you this way.
That's
He kind of like engineered you this way. Have you always been like a hard charger, like able to work through adversity moments? Like, because there's plenty of them in business.
Oh yeah.
What do you fall back on when it comes around for you?
Well, two things I think of many. Two of many. One is work ethic. Is I've always had a job since I was 10 years old, and then being able to work through realizing that. In summers I could work 75 hours a week, with 45 in the brickyard and three nights a week till midnight at the local diner, places like that. That work ethic really meant a lot to me, and that work ethic made it to where I could, the events of stress or controversy or things that might come up. It's just another day, It's just something we've got to feel like that. The other was my mother. My mother was a health educator. She was a seminary graduate. She was a community advocate. I thought she was kidding, but she said her goal was to work 40 hours a week and do community service for 35 hours a week. And I started keeping score, and she was doing it. But
that's
anyway,
a lot of time.
Yeah. But her gifts were things of organization and conflict resolution, but her gift was she was a great writer, and she could see things. For example, there's the AAUW, American Association of University Women, that she brought a chapter to the Salisbury area. There was hospice. She brought hospice and wrote the grants and being able to do that. And she taught me how writing is so important.
Yeah.
To be able to write. And so, and then organizing meetings. If you ask me, one of the gifts that I've got that I will share with everybody, and that is be able to create agendas.
Yeah.
And with time frames on them, and be able to, and then
don't have a meeting with no point.
That's right. That's right. And if you don't come up with any value on it, stop having those meetings.
Correct.
Yeah. So and then being able to write the minutes. So that sort of bookends of organization among people gave the people that were there confidence that this is of value.
Yeah.
So those gifts, then being able to take those and bring those into growing companies. I mean, we were wiring the house with the electricity on with some of these things when you're going from 2 to 2,000.
Oh yeah.
When you're doing when we start GCS, the first thing happens when we start GCS is we lose our biggest client. The second thing that happens is everything goes offshore.
Yeah.
So we had to we were able to walk through those, to pivot, to be flexible, to go and work among those. And from a leadership standpoint, I didn't mind showing my emotions. I don't mean
That's
being,
good.
I don't mean the mad, I'm not a fiery guy,
Yeah.
Things like that. But yeah, gosh, I'm a little worried about these guys.
Yeah.
Here's what we're going to do. Here are the 3 things we're going to do from a strategic planning standpoint. Here's the steps we're going to take. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And to be able to pivot when we had to.
Well, I think that's good because if you're a leader and you're actually going through a moment of struggle,
Yeah.
people aren't stupid. They know.
Yeah.
So if you gloss over it and you try to make it seem like it's all rosy, one of two things. They either think this guy's naive and he doesn't know what's going on, or he's lying to me.
Yeah.
So just by being able to call it out, guys, this is an obstacle. This is going to be tough. I don't necessarily have all the answers, but here's the plan. Here's how we're going to go attack it. Then you can get people fired up about the opportunity again. And I think that's also, people follow leaders like that.
Yeah.
How do you mentioned something here, and it resonated with me because I hate pointless meetings. I love meetings with agendas that have a clear-cut goal. And if they only need to be 15 minutes or 30 minutes, make them 15, 30 minutes. If you're on the calendar for an hour, you don't have to fill the time.
Right.
Go give that time back and let people do something productive. How do you do it at GCS now? I mean, having the number of employees you guys have and the reach you guys have, how do you keep the clutter out of the day-to-day?
Routines. So we have the routines where we have you have a meeting every month that might last an hour and a half, and then you have meetings every day that we call them stand-up fives.
Yeah.
So nobody's sitting down, and we do them virtually now, so you never know what everybody's doing. But to be able to have those so that you can stay engaged, it's just like an attorney in a courtroom. You never ask a question that you don't already know the answer to. With us, the thing is we never want to bring up anything that will be a surprise. So being able to prepare folks, like we're gonna talk about shutting down this area over here, this call center over here. We're going to talk about that in the meeting. So let's here are the three things I feel like we should be talking about. So be ready for that. So it's not a surprise when we talk about that. And there's the other side is the one where I got most of the feedback is that I was moving too fast. Is we're going to open up 3 more. We're going to go to these three geographic areas, and this is the explosive growth that we're built for. Yeah. So let's do it. And that confidence, business is vitally important. It's really important for me, to be able to make enough money, and I've done fine. To be able to take care of my family and take care of the things that are necessary to me, to be able to give back to the community like you do, in your process, but to know that that's not all the stuff. That the spiritual side of it is so good. I just follow the Apostle Paul. I won't be him.
That's right.
I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah,
but I'll do
I don't want to get beaten and stoned necessarily.
Right. Yeah,
I have to.
But I'll be able to take that part of it. So it's been it's been fun to watch it play out.
Well, you mentioned some stories about your dad, and obviously your dad was in full-time ministry, and you've been going to the same church for this almost your whole life.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel any pressure to go into ministry?
No.
Tell me that background because, just thoughts on that.
Well, grow where you're planted. Mm-hmm. And that I think what happened between age 10 and age 25 is I knew I was best in my ministry, or what I could do was to be able to support or use my gifts toward business activities. And to watch that was real important to me to see that. But then to also, like my mother had, 40 and 35, when you're running a business, it's your life, it can be. Yeah. And so to be able to do that. So I've always allowed us to be able to blend time. Yeah. That's the gift of being able to, if there's a 2:00 meeting at the church, I can be there. But but I also have to, do the copywriting for the next newsletter or what they want to hear from the president. That might be at 10:00 at night. Yep. To be able to work with that. So I never had the pressure or the approach that to go into the ministry, but I feel like I live a life of prayer. Yeah. And to be able to be as supportive for others, to be into servant leadership as much as I can. And I think that is my ministry. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. You see a lot of folks who maybe pressure to follow in dad's footsteps or something like that. So it sounds like your dad was an incredible guy. Yeah. Didn't put that pressure on you. Right. But to be fair, he was the associate conference minister in the time when nobody kept score on hours. So now the person in his position can work 410s, blocks for 40 hours and things like that. He worked all the time. Yeah. So every Sunday he rarely came to our church because he was preaching somewhere else. Yeah. So which we always joke that all he needed was one sermon. Because that's true. Nobody else heard twice. That's hilarious. That's good. So I didn't get to see him as much, and I regret that. That hurts. That didn't really get to spend as much time with him. Yeah. He got hit by a drunk driver when he was 51, had a heart attack, and really the last 10 years, my mother took care of him. Yeah. So that I got to watch that and watch just what caregiving was about, and that's real love. Appreciate that. Yes. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. Well, let's switch gears into ApSeed because that's what
obviously you started this thing and it's your passion now. Most people at your age, when I successful in business, you're thinking about, all right, well, what's next for me is going to be buying some golf clubs, kicking it back on a beach, drinking Mai Tais for the next, 20 or 30 years. You're not doing that. So tell us like the origin story, how did you identify the problem? And then what gave you the desire to go start this new thing? What's it all about?
I was on the State Board of Education, and the governor at the time, Pat McCrory, went to Catawba College where we were classmates, and he asked me to be on the State Board of Education, and I think he asked everybody he knew and 3 dead people before he got to me, because I didn't even know what it meant. And he said, "No, I want a business person on the State Board of Education." And so I went through a very steep learning curve on what was going on there, and the very first vote that we made was to approve $30 million for remediation expenses for the 4th graders in the state. I didn't even know what a remediation was, and it's summer school. It's our after school care. It's the additional stuff. So $30 million for buses and lunches for children that were behind in school. And so that resonated with me. And then the other part, because you went 3 days a month to Raleigh to do this. You go up an elevator, doors open up. There's a big banner there that says, if you graduate from high school, on average, you'll make $10,000 more per year than if you don't graduate from high school. So I do the math, business person, ROI.
Yeah.
So 40, you work for 40 years, $400,000. If we can move the needle on graduation rates, 1%, well, that's 150 children. Do the math every year and you're billions.
Yeah.
You're really looking into a great return on investment just to get somebody to
graduate from high school. Yeah.
High school. So my wife and I, at this point, I'm doing some soul searching, because the businesses, I'll just go ahead and say it, we're becoming very successful, debt free, being able to do some things, do some philanthropy work, but just felt kind of empty.
Yeah.
It's like, I got my 1440 here, and I just don't feel like I can really, doing everything that I can.
Yeah.
Let's do something with that graduation rate. So we said, well, let's help juniors in high school. Well, I was miserable in high school. So anyway, let's do 8th graders and get them ready for high school.
Yeah.
And then let's do 3rd grade reading test. Everybody all about that.
I mean, that's a big deal. Yeah.
We bumped it all the way back to pre-K. And we said, let's do something with pre-K. Let's
You're
start
like, how do I get to the root of the problem?
That's it. Yeah.
That's good.
It. Yeah. So you play volleyball. If you don't, if you don't get to where you're in college and you don't know what to do, how to set with somebody or things like that.
Yeah.
You learn that very early.
Yeah.
And so we walked it all the way back. We said, let's do something for pre-K. And it took about a year and a half. And then finally, there were like 10 epiphanies, going on in this thing. Because I in SOMAR and GCS and all the things that we've done from an entrepreneurial standpoint, if you want to say that, they're all scalable. They can all really grow and make it and just explode, grow exponentially. I say, I don't do anything. I don't want to do anything unless we can make it to where it can really, really grow. And GCS, I leaned on that group a lot on this, going through it. And our information technology, our IT group, they had about 20 people in there. And one guy had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old at that point that were looking at Kindle Fires and going through there. So I'm going like, that's it. Let's do that. Let's get those out there. Let's do it as a nonprofit. Let's get those out there. So that's where it started. And I started telling everybody about that. And then Apple Computer heard about it. So Apple Education in North Carolina, she brought in 6 people on January 28th, 2016. We got 40 people in a room going through a strategic planning process, finding out what all we had to do. We were able to get the kindergarten experts to show us what types of apps for letters, numbers, shapes, and colors were necessary. What kinds of, just how sophisticated, which is not sophisticated, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Did the device have to be? Who were distribution points? The whole sort of, we put a real business approach onto it and got it started that way.
Man, and okay, so how did you boil down what's on the tablet? Because ApSeed, so I got a million questions hitting my head all at once here.
Okay.
Where's the name come from?
Yeah.
And then can you tell us a little bit about okay, how did you form this is what needs to be in the curriculum if we're going to get it in the hands of a kid? Was there an approach of this needs to be something that we can get into a kid's hands that doesn't need parental assistance? Because, some of the, areas that are lacking resources, there might not be a parent that's right over top of them helping them learn. That's probably the problem.
Even if there is, they might not know what to do.
So, all right, what's the name? How'd you come up with the curriculum? What's it? Just give it to me.
So I consider myself more of a concierge than a consolidator and being able to pull the right people together.
Yeah.
So when the Apple computer people came, that's what we're going to name it. So we named it ApSeed, and a seed because we were going 3 to 4 year olds. It's just getting started.
That makes
the
sense.
seedling, and this was called a seedling at one point.
Yeah.
So to be able to do it that way was the name. Once we weren't able to use Apple's iPads because they were way too expensive, we had to keep the price point down.
Yeah.
Then we renamed it to ApSeed. That's 1P, APSEED.
Yeah.
And because they're applications, they're the kindergarten experts told us about these letters, numbers, shapes, colors. They brought in developers for nonprofit organizations that could provide the games that were able to do this. So we've had pretty much the same 14 apps on the touchpad for the last 10 years because there is no 2.0 in letters, numbers, shapes, and colors. They don't change.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
they don't
true.
change. So we were able to do that. We've done all kinds of refinements. But the other thing, the key differentiator of the touchpad is that there's no Wi-Fi. So it's locked down.
I was going to ask you about that too.
It's locked down. No Wi-Fi, no internet connection, no flashlight, no camera, and no keyboard.
Which means no weirdos are going to get after these kids.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So that was a big part because both from to your point that the parent doesn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the 40 different questions at a kindergarten readiness assessment were going to be. I do now.
Yeah.
But to have it to where that's built into the touchpad, not all of them, but 70% of what's on a kindergarten assessment are on the touchpad. That helps the parent have the confidence that they can give this to the child. These are for 3 and 4 year olds or pre-K.
Yeah.
It ends up being for kindergarten as well. If they get behind, they can still use this to catch up. But to be able to do that, the number one feedback we get from parents when they receive the touchpad and they're able to give it to the child and they can watch the child use it, the child enjoys it, they can work together with it, they can leave the child alone with it for the confidence and knowing that it's not going to they're not going to get out of hand. The number one thing we hear from the parents is, I got my phone back.
That's crazy. That's not where my head would have gone.
Me neither.
But you're exactly right. I mean, you go to any restaurant, that's a kid-friendly restaurant.
Yeah.
And what do you see? Mm-hmm. It's not every table, but a lot of the tables is, parents talking, they're trying to have a meal, and they're giving the kid the phone.
Right.
To think that that's happening all the time inside of a home.
Yeah.
Wow. And that's not good.
No.
There's a lot of stuff on that phone that we don't want kids accessing, and then vice versa.
Yeah, because you can watch Barney.
Yeah.
And then the next thing that goes to is Barney in a cage fight.
Yeah.
And then Barney doing whatever.
You're exactly right.
Those are the things that happen. So we were great to hear that.
Okay, so the question I have next is, you're on the State Board of Education, so you're seeing behind the curtain of the traditional system.
Okay.
Why do you got to go solve this versus let the traditional system solve it? Why does it take a new nonprofit and a business leader to head this thing up?
Well, I wish it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
But I can understand why it's that way. The traditional system is more of the bricks and mortar at the school, more in person. Mm-hmm. That part. where we focus is anywhere outside of the more conventional places, like a child care center or a Head Start, where they have multitude of different learning apparatuses and opportunities, and the wonderful word that is used that I can't understand. They have manipulatives, so there are plenty of manipulatives at the center. When they get home, you know, there's in the folks that we work with primarily, nobody that you probably you or I grew up with or things like that, but they don't have as many things. They've got a TV.
Yeah.
You know, and TV dinners or something like that. The touchpad provides them at least one thing. It's not a silver bullet, shiny one, but it provides that 3 and 4 year old an opportunity to get closer to, you know, being ready for kindergarten. So the traditional, there's not a traditional model that goes into the home of 3 and 4 year olds and says, "Hey, get ready for kindergarten. Here are the 40 things that you have to do." And let us help you. So
another question I have for you, just hearing you talk about it, there's a lot of passion in your voice, and obviously you get fired up. I mean, you probably didn't think that, you know, hey, you know,
no.
After I do all these things, letters, numbers, shapes, and I'm getting way back to basics on this.
Yeah.
Why do you have a heart for the kids? Like, what is it? Initially, it struck up because you're having business success.
Yeah.
And you got your 1440, and you're like, all right, I got to go do something with this. Like, God didn't bless me with this to just sit on for myself. Why this? Like, do you think that God presented you with this opportunity specifically?
Yes. Yeah. And I think, I don't know, what's the term I try to use that doesn't make sense? Create serendipity, you know, is to create it. And I create it by being, you know, making myself available to places like here.
Yeah.
And, but when I was a basketball player in high school, I was most of the basketball team liked me. I was their best friend. You know why? I had a car. And so a Ford Fairlane 500, 3 on the tree, no power steering, no power brakes, but man, it had some big seats. And I'd take them home. So, you know, I'd go into the projects, and they got to where we're still friends, all of us, you know, that are still alive. But they would take me into their homes, and as I described earlier, that's what it looked like. A big TV, not a single piece of writing paper or anything to read on there, and we would have conversations, and I would tell them that I said, you have the same opportunities that I have. You should be just as good in school as I am. You know what they tell me? No, we don't. Well, no, we don't. No, it's not. We don't have the same opportunities. And they were right. I was wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so I reflect back on that from when I was 16, 17 years old to where I'm 50 years later, being able to look at it and go like, we got to change that.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, that's my, you know, to being able to, you know, serve those who are most in need, and to be able to make a generational change. You know, the Maslow hierarchy of needs has it to where if you don't take care of that base, you're not going to teach them how to read. You know, you got to do that.
Nothing on the higher level of this pyramid matters unless these basic needs are met.
Yeah. So we're second level, stuff like that, to be able to help them. So that's very important to me. And that's sort of a, you know, that's back in, I reflect back in 2014, 15, 16, when we got started, that you call it, if you want to call it the Holy Spirit, you call it, you want to call it soulful, you can call it anything, but there was a feeling of hope.
Yeah.
You know, that I was able to take business principles, business activities, and apply that. Everybody has it. You can hear the passion. Everybody has a passion.
Yeah.
But, you know, do you have the productivity to make it to where it's something that can really scale?
Yeah.
So you'll hear terms that we use, that we want market saturation, we want vertical integration, we want continuous improvement, we want all these things that we can be able to do. Oh yeah, and passion.
Yeah.
You know, so passion plus productivity equals promise. So we think that's what we're about.
You're firing me up.
That help?
I think Judah's going to run through the wall here in a second. He's our producer on the other side. He's getting ready to run through it. This is awesome,
First
man.
and focused.
I love it. All right, well, let's shift gears again.
All right.
Marriage and family. You're a husband. You're a father.
Yeah.
A lot of our listeners are folks in business, and they want some of the same things that you're talking about. They want a real mission. They want purpose and passion behind their work, and they want to use it for something that's bigger than just themselves. And they're running hard at it, but it's hard to do that and then also manage being a father and a husband and being attentive to your top priorities. Like, what are some of the secrets that you put in place that have kept your marriage strong and then your relationship with your children strong?
Yeah. Oftentimes, I've watched leaders where they compartmentalize and they hole up, and they don't want to talk about what's going on. And so they might be a different person or a chameleon or something that when they're different than when they are at home or where they are at work. I'm not. Be the same person all the way around and be able to express when you're having a good day or a bad day to let them know, but stay totally focused on where you are at that point. So by engaging my wife Missy into this whole process of ApSeed, by her going and traveling with me at GCS or SOMAR or those types of things, by being part of organizations. By the way, I join everything. So, just join as many things as possible. And you all of a sudden, I equate it to an octopus. An octopus has 8 tentacles, and they're all doing 8 different things.
Yeah.
So you got something like that. So that
resonates with me.
My wife, Missy, our two adult children, they're both married. We love our in-laws. We are blessed to be able to have that type of relationships. Grandchildren now. Being able to, but they see it when we run to the fire, or I do, when something happens in the business that I've created enough of those deposits with the family. So I do the dishes. I mow the grass.
I was told you have something called the Greg Alcorn Dishwashing Club.
Well,
are you the only member?
Yes. Yeah, I'm the founder and the sole member. Yeah. You could go.
I actually might. Okay, can I be this? I might be the second member of that because I think I need to take that on.
Just start your own.
I will. Okay. All right. Challenge accepted.
Right. That's right. Yeah. But to be able to stay engaged, it's just fun to be around. Your family while they're doing what they love. They love to cook. I'm second-class citizen to say to put it at this highest point of cooking. But man, can I clean it up?
Yeah.
I don't let anything soak overnight. Oh no soaking overnight. We're going to, the place is going to be leave no trace behind, as they say in Scouts. To be able to have it that way. So, it's not always perfect. To be able to be that, but have that, utopia kind of a approach to family, but it certainly helps to try.
Well, you can sense there's a lot of love there. I think there's wisdom in that, though. Just be what you are in front of your family, because it's. I will say, for some guys that I know that where they would sit right here and say, "Yeah, this is where I got it wrong," is where they bottled it up.
Yeah,
they hid it. It was just stress, and just the pressure relief valve was just always waiting to come undone. And when it comes undone, a lot of times it's hard to control the direction it goes.
Right.
So just not hiding it. Just let your family see who you really are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom there. Well, okay, so switching into this, what's the number one principle for you that you feel like has helped you not only on your journey as a business leader, but also in your walk with Christ?
Yeah. I alluded to it, that I don't take it lightly. I join everything. I try to be involved in as many different things, so I see as many different aspects of people as possible, so that helps me grow.
Yeah.
So if you hang around with people that are just like you all the time, you're not going to improve. You're not going to grow.
Yeah.
And you're not going to change. So it's just it's so enlightening. I would never be as good. We talked about setting agendas and doing minutes, something as simple as that, but that it sounds simple, but it's so powerful on being able to get stuff done. If I had not joined the American Association of University Women, to be able to be with AUW and watch my mother do that. So joining stuff, because what happens when you join stuff? You can always quit.
That's true. Yeah, I was going to say, as long as you're not in charge, if you're just a member, that's true.
Right,
that's actually really true.
Yeah, if you're in charge, it's because you've invested in it.
Yeah.
You invest your time.
Yeah, you found something worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah, people just don't take enough shots sometimes. I don't know why that is.
That's right.
Do you see that?
Yes. I
Yeah.
see it all the time. I see it all the time.
I mean, I just feel like every now and then people just need to say, hey, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and I'm going to go. I'm going to there's a lot of energy involved with that, and there's decisions that get made, but you don't have to commit forever.
Yeah.
But just go check it out because you don't know what you're going to find behind that door. That's really good, man. All right. When you look forward at life, how old are you?
68.
Oh my God. You don't look 68.
Yeah.
You don't sound 68.
Well,
so
I'm working on it.
That's good. Well, all this stuff you do is keeping you young.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about when you look forward at life?
Yeah. The BHAGs, the big, hairy, audacious goals of being able to look to all different aspects of my life. I want to stay 2 C's, curious and challenged, to be able to do that. So to do that, you've got to take risk. You got to be able to do some things. 400,000 is the number for ApSeed. I've got some numbers with
400,000 kids. You want
yes.
that many hands?
Yeah, and we're just under 40,000 now, so we're almost 10% there.
All right. Do you know if you know this number? I'll be impressed. But how many kids are in like the kindergarten, pre-K age in our country?
7 million.
Okay, and then 400,000. Those are the ones that are like in the most. Basically, they need it the worst.
Well, the 400,000 is a goal by 2030.
Okay.
And then we'll get to 7 million after that.
Hey, I'm in.
Yeah.
All right. So what else?
Well, we got, you just got to have all kinds of stuff. So with GCS, I have these 7-year contracts. So we've had 2 of them so far. We're in our 15th year of these, an extension year to the two sevens. 15. I want another, 21 years of that. To be able to do that, because that feeds the engine of being able to do some things with ApSeed and beyond.
Yeah,
so being able to do that. I've got all kinds of things in the community. You mentioned about being in Salisbury, and for what I want to do with Catawba College, which I graduated from. I'm a trustee. I'm very much deeply involved in that to be able to help that. We've got a really cool, exciting program of being able to take our church, which is a traditional United Church of Christ, UCC church, mainstream, downtown church, and move it over to Catawba, which has a terrific chapel and stuff like that, and then be able to have a unique approach that the unchurched, the underchurched, the students, faculty, staff, the alumni, everybody within, that'll be different because it'll have a music component, a lot like what some of the other newer churches are doing, but also have a traditional component to it. So I'm excited about that too.
That's awesome too. Wow, I just love that. Like, I can ask you what you're excited about, and you don't have one thing. You've got 3 or 4 things.
Got to. Yeah.
I mean, but how awesome! The other thing that you just mentioned, though, is your motivation behind continuing to grow and have GCS thrive isn't just for yourself. It's like you're using that to go do something that's really deeply important to you at ApSeed.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of business leaders that need to hear that. Is when you get to a certain point in your business where you don't really need to grow anymore because you're not going to have any personal gain in it, and you're thinking like, what is all this effort for? Man, channel it into something else.
Yeah.
It's other people, somebody else that you can go help and serve through your business, because work is important, but missions matter a lot. So what are you using it for?
That's right.
So cool.
That's right.
All right, I got a last question here for you. If you could give a piece of advice to the future generations of entrepreneurs, the young listeners out there who do want to live an integrated faith and work life, what advice would you give that person?
Well, I'll tell you, I'll share with you that the way I reflect on that, or I would share with them, is to testify how stress can just handcuff an entrepreneur, can handcuff somebody who wants to do something, can suck the energy out of what you do, is to learn how to handle the stress. And I do it in 4 ways. I do it, 1, recognize it. When you recognize it, it's when you've had a communication you haven't done, or something that you're frustrated with that keeps you up at night, or makes you look really tired in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's true.
So that part of it, and then I write it down. Then I talk to somebody. Then I do it. So that part, when I learned that through the advice I would give everybody, is to know thyself, you know, and to be able to, first of all, do as many psychological tests and the ones that you're confident with, psychological tests, and then you can apply their principles to that. And for me, the biblical principles are so important to be able to apply that. But I had to know myself first.
Yeah.
Because then how can I love other people before I have to love myself?
Yeah.
So that's part. That stress part comes from knowing thyself, and then you know how to handle those things, and then you can apply.
That's really, really good. Wow. Well, thank you so much for being here. I mean, I
Loved it.
We told the story beforehand, but I think you were supposed to be here. I think
Yeah.
there's people who are listening to this right now who needed to hear what you have to say.
Wow.
You've had a certain level of success in business that I feel like people will look at that and be like, well, how can I achieve that? But also you've kept so grounded in your faith, in your marriage, as a father, in your walk with Christ,
Yeah.
in your hometown. Like you've kept the first things first and the right priorities. And I think that this is going to be inspiring to a lot of people to hear how you've lived life.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me share it, and thank you for everything you've shared with me. I appreciate it.
So where can they go? So if they want to learn more about ApSeed, and then also if they wanted to get involved, what's the best ways to do that?
Just the website. It's ApSeed with one P, APSEED.org. It's a nonprofit organization. On there, there's 3 ways to get involved. You can become a donor through as an angel investor or a foundation, or help us get find public funding. From a partnership standpoint, if you've got a church or an organization that you think would like to share this with their 3 and 4 year olds, then you can reach out there. And then if you're a parent and you want one, let us know there too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you very much. I'll put everything in the show notes, and then we'll be following the story.
Yeah.
So we'll give some updates here periodically along the way on development and how things progress. But
I hope we can come back in a year or two and tee it up again.
hey, if you're in town, man, I'm game.
All right.
So,
Let's do
well,
it.
thank you very much. We're going to be over and out, but if you want more access to shows, recordings, books, and other resources, you can get them all at markgreaves.com. But Greg, thanks for being here. Thank you for watching the First in Focus show. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to hit like, subscribe, and then share with a friend.